Good morning. I'm here in my accustomed place on Wednesday morning with a good second cup of coffee. Hope that your hump day, your Wednesday, is off to a good start. So for today, I'm going to finish up talking about the means of grace. I've started this, I guess, about a month and a half ago, and I began talking about Holy Communion, a means of grace. And to remind you, this term means of grace has been used by a number of different denominational traditions. It's big for us in the Wesleyan Methodist line. Lutherans have used it. The Reformed Church uses it. Roman Catholics. Many different versions or parts of the broader church use the term means of grace, and they're simply things that we can do that strengthen our faith, that strengthen our walk with God. Wesley would have looked at it as things that we can do wherein we can receive grace. So we began, like I said, about a month and a half ago, looking at Holy Communion. Certainly communion is a means of grace. When we go to communion, we can receive the grace of God. It strengthens our faith. Studying the Bible, searching the scriptures, as Wesley would have put it. Obviously, prayer. The more we pray, the closer to God we are. You can't have a relationship with somebody that you don't talk to. Fasting. Fasting. As fasting periodically as a way to focus our attention upon God. And then for today, acts of mercy, works of mercy, and all the others we can very much see. Communion's a means of grace, obviously. Prayer, obviously. Searching the scriptures. Fasting, maybe. But acts of mercy, definitely. And it may not seem quite as obvious as the others, but it definitely is. It definitely was for Wesley. So, acts of mercy as a means of grace. Where is that in the Bible? Well, we'll begin with Matthew 25. And this is a passage which I have heard so many times in so many different settings that it is almost cliched. Matthew 25, the judgment of the sheep and the goats. Take a read sometime if you're not familiar with it. Then there's James, the little epistle of James, who famously said that faith without works is dead. And then near the end of James 1, he said that religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is to visit widows and orphans in their distress and remain unstained from the world. We find Jesus' example over and over again in the Gospels. But you can get a really good dose of this without ever getting to the New Testament. Leviticus 17 to about 27, that long section there is called the Holiness Code. And that Holiness Code is all about how people are supposed to live with each other. It's all about how we're supposed to live with each other. There is some stuff in the law, in Leviticus in particular, that is really dull and really dry. But the Holiness Code tends to be really practical exhortations about how God expects us to live with each other. So, in that, there's going to be all of this stuff about how we provide, we look after, we live with each other. in the Holiness Code, you'll find the first mention of love your neighbor as yourself. All of these exhortations to look after widows, orphans, and aliens in your midst. The command not to glean the edges of your field, you leave that for the poor, for those who can't provide for themselves. Read the book of Amos. Read the book of Amos, where the prophet there just goes all over the nation of Israel for how they're mistreating the poor. So there's this, throughout the Bible, there's this expectation that we will show mercy. There's the expectation that God's people, be they faithful Jews of the Old Testament, Christians in the New, will show mercy. It's assumed. It's not as much commanded as it's assumed, which makes it even stronger. So some things to remember if we're going to be looking at acts of mercy, works of mercy as a means of grace. The first thing is this. You and I can't change a person's life. That's, as they say sometimes, that's above our pay grade. We can do something good, something kind for somebody, but we can't change a life. That's a God thing. So let's be humble about what we're doing, because I can't change somebody else's life. God does that. Also, something that is really important with me is remembering what Jesus said. Jesus was talking about in the Sermon on the Mount, when you're giving your alms, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Don't make a big production over doing something for somebody else, some kind deed for somebody else. Don't make a production over it. When you do that, you don't have any reward. You just do it. Another thing, and we Methodists mess this up, I think, and maybe Christians of all sorts do. We love to quote St. Francis of Assisi, and I've heard the quote so many times, and it is something to this effect. Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. And the simple truth is, St. Francis never said it. That quote is not found in any of his recorded writings or sermons. It's not there. It doesn't show up attributed to him till many centuries later. Preach the gospel at all times, if necessary, use words, is about like saying take a bath often, if necessary, use water. Acts of mercy, whatever they may be, do not take the place of words. If we are going to preach the gospel, if we're going to witness, then we have to use words. Words do that. We should, and we are expected to show kindness to people, to show mercy, particularly to those who can't provide for themselves or stick up for themselves, but that does not take the place of witnessing and sharing our faith. So next time you hear somebody say, preach the gospel at all times, if necessary, use words, think about the corollary, which is take a bath often, if necessary, use water. Really, Christian witness is showing mercy. It is showing mercy, and it is witnessing and sharing our faith. It is both of them. It's not either or, it's both. A little bit of history. The first, actually the oldest standing Methodist building in the world is called the New Room. It's in Bristol in England. It was built in 1739 for the Methodist Society there in Bristol, and then 10 years later it was expanded. And so the downstairs portion of this building was used for their society meetings. And their Methodist Society meetings, they met every week, and they sing some hymns, pray. Somebody would read one of Wesley's sermons if there wasn't a preacher there. They met every week. But that same large gathering area was also used to distribute food to the poor and medicines to people who couldn't afford it, to teach children of the poor how to read. It was both. It was both acts of mercy. We're going to provide food for people that don't have any. We're going to teach their kids that can't afford to be educated how to read. And we're going to witness to our faith and preach it. Christian witness is both. And at its best, we Methodists do both. And at our best, Christians of every tradition will do both. So acts of mercy, works of mercy, what are examples of that? You know somebody that's in the hospital, you go see them. There is COVID, which gets in the way of hospital visitation. But assuming you don't have COVID and the necessary protocols for that, if there's somebody in the hospital, you go see them, especially somebody that doesn't have family around. Go visit them. Volunteer at a hospice house. Visit somebody who's lost a loved one. Somebody who's just buried. Visit somebody who's just buried his mother. Somebody who's just lost a husband, etc. Go visit somebody. Go visit somebody that's grieving. Volunteer at a soup kitchen. Work on a Habitat for Humanity house. And I could go on and on. Go on a short-term mission trip. All of these are things which they're an act of mercy. They are an act of mercy. It's something, you don't have to do it. You don't do it because somebody deserves it, but you just do it. And you just do it. It's good to donate money to a cause. It's good to take a minute and write the check. It's even better to be there in person. The money is good for whatever a cause, but it's better to be there in person. It is better to be there in person. In doing things like this, you will be blessed. You will be blessed. You become more aware of how blessed you are, how fortunate you are when you are around others who are in need, in whatever way they may be needy. If you are working on, like I've worked Salkehatchie numerous times, and that's a South Carolina thing. It's a wonderful ministry, and you're working in a house of somebody an invalid that can't begin to fix a leaky toilet, and they can't afford a plumber, and so the floor rots out in the bathroom. They can't afford to replace the roof, so the roof leaks, which causes all sorts of rotten problems inside. doing that, you become aware of just how fortunate you are, and you become aware, really aware, that everybody is created in the image of God. You will be blessed. And one thing to remember with this, when we're doing an act of mercy, whatever it may be, please don't do it because you will get blessed. That's self-serving. You just do it. Don't do it especially or thinking, if I do this, I'm going to get a blessing from it. To me, that seems self-serving. You just do it. There's the old Nike slogan, just do it. You just do it. You do it, and to me, if you do something for somebody that can never repay, that person can never repay you for your time or your energy, they can't thank you, that is, to me, as close to being godlike as you can come. When you do something kind, something good for somebody else that cannot repay, somebody that doesn't know you, that's the kingdom. Really, if you can find an opportunity to do something good for somebody and they don't even know you've done it. Like, you've got somebody that is, somebody's in the hospital. They've been in the hospital for several days. You go cut their grass. And that person will never know that you did it. But that's where it is. Something simple like that. Leave some food at a doorstep. That is kindness, and that is mercy. And that's, to me, that is the kingdom. We don't do it expecting anything. We just do it. One of my favorite verses is Galatians 2:20. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. And the life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God. I just do it. It's a natural part of who we are. It's a natural part of who we are. We don't have to be commanded. We just do it because it is Christ living within me. They return back to the judgment of the sheep and the goats. Matthew 25. And that's where Jesus talks about, for as much as you haven't done it to the least of these, you haven't done it to me. And for as much as you have done it to the least of these, you have done it also to me. Here's the thing. When you read that, neither group had any concept that they were serving Jesus. They didn't know. The goats, Lord, we never saw you hungry or thirsty. We never saw you. And Jesus said, but because you didn't do it to the least of these, you didn't do it to me. And with the sheep, they're just going about their lives doing their thing. And they were serving Jesus without consciously being aware of it. Lord, when did we see you? We don't remember that. And their praise is, because you did it to the least of these, you've done it to me. So acts of mercy is a means of grace. When you do things like this, and I gave several examples. You volunteer at a soup kitchen, visit somebody in the hospital, carry some food over, visit somebody that's lost a loved one, volunteer at a hospice, volunteer at a school, help teach kids how to read. All sorts of things. Go on a short-term mission trip. All sorts of things. What these things do is they teach us humility. They are things that teach us humility, that remind us of how much God has given us. They teach us humility because you see people who are grieving, people who are suffering in whatever way, and that makes you painfully aware of all that God has done for you, and that makes you humble before God, and that strengthens our walk. So acts of mercy, works of mercy are means of grace, and when you have the opportunity, we show mercy. And like I said, it's not so much commanded. It is commanded in places, but it's just assumed. It's assumed that God's people, be they faithful Jews of old, Christians now, that God's people will be kind. They will show mercy. So, have a great day, and if you have the opportunity today, show mercy and grace to somebody who needs it. Have a good Wednesday.